the last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Dark Matters Radio, right here on KGRA DB, Digital Broadcasting. And tonight we brought back Dr. John Brandenburg. We're going to be discussing some new information that has emanated from the Pentagon. As a matter of fact, it all deals with the UAP disclosure question. Now, on a number of these shows and also on UAP Crossfire, I had referenced a paper I wrote called Disclosure, a dangle just out of reach. Well, finally, this past Friday, Saturday, Sunday, KGRA DB finally has it uploaded to their blog spot. If you have any questions about this, I know that if you're tuned into this program, undoubtedly this is a question that's been on your mind since at least last year. As a matter of fact, on my birthday last year, the congressional hearings with, among other people, whistleblower or so-called whistleblower David Grush. Now, this is something that I have been involved in deeply up to my eyebrows for 30 years, actually more than 30 years. The question of UFOs, today UAPs, just another name change. Hey, look at that red button over there. There's nothing to see here. Well, it's the same business, okay? But they changed the nomenclature, same phenomenon. But I've been battling literally for years over getting this topic in a legitimate mode among the public. When my wife, Vicki, and I were publishing UFO magazine, this was something we strived for at first every 2 months. At that time, at the very beginning, UFO magazine came out once every 2 months and later monthly. Okay, this is something that didn't go away then. It's not going away now. There are a hell of a lot of questions, but this paper I wrote, I sat down, excuse me, for basically a couple of months, and I went over copious documents, copious notes, things that I have investigated in the past, people that I had interfaced with, people like, among others, Ingo Swann, the godfather, basically, of remote viewing, the Stargate program, and many others. And after disclosing to the public at large, you may have missed this before, but if you have, I'm going to tell you again right now and right here. I discovered during the Apollo program that when our American astronauts went to the moon, you sitting down? You ready? They were carrying weapons. They had weapons on board the lunar lander. Now, I got to be honest. When I first heard that, I didn't believe it. But I did a little investigation and contacted NASA, their public affairs people, put it to them bluntly, okay? And I finally got a spokesperson to admit, yes, they did have 45 caliber pistols on board. 1911, government model 1911 A1 45 caliber pistols. And I was flabbergasted. I said, why? Well, you know, if they're coming back from the moon and something happened to their craft and they crashed into a jungle or something, they had to have a means to defend themselves. And I said, crashed into a jungle? All those flights, every one of them, landed in the ocean. What jungle? Well, they didn't have a coherent response, but you had to be knowledgeable about this subject and topic. For example, before we launched the first mission to the moon, NASA conducted basically a lunar transient phenomenon report. For 400 years, going back to the 1600s, okay, world-class astronomers from that time forward had been seeing a lot of strange sights on the moon. They saw moving, well, from their standpoint, dots. They saw what appeared to be things flying past in their telescopes. And they had telescopes that were quite good. This was not with the naked eye, okay? They had telescopes and they observed things that looked like flares. They saw things that looked like clouding. They saw craters that seemed to be lit from the interior. Now, if you hear something like that today, what would that make you think about? Well, I'll tell you what I thought about. I thought to myself, and believe me, I was not the first guy to suggest this. It sounds like somebody or something is on the damn moon. Okay. Well, later, after the last Apollo mission came back, Apollo 17, okay, in 1972, in December, basically NASA shut down outer space stuff, with the exception of several years later launching Skylab. Everything we did was in near Earth orbit, okay? And except for the robotic probes that NASA has sent out, all right, except for those, we haven't done a damn thing. Now, granted, today we are talking about going back to the moon. It's a hell of an expensive proposition. We certainly had the technology over 50 years ago, but technologies have changed. Do we have something new in the wings? Well, I don't know. Time will tell. But here's something to think about. After all that time, okay, in the 1990s, in 1994, another mission, robotic, was sent to the moon, called the Clementine Project. And tonight's guest, John Brandenburg, was the administrative aide to the director of that program. And something mysterious happened in my view and purview. Here we go. Okay. And a lot of my thinking goes back to when I was in the military. I was involved in Vietnam and Southeast Asia in intelligence operations. Okay. The organization I was a part of was called the Army Security Agency. And basically, what we were doing, we had targeted the North Vietnamese communist enemy, and we were using various means and various methods of gathering intelligence about what these guys were doing and what they were up to and who was helping them out. For example, we discovered that there were so-called Chinese communist troops that were involved that were volunteers. Okay. There were Soviet Russian troops there. As a matter of fact, if you know anything about the military, if you know anything about that war, if you know anything about the Soviets, they field tested at that time, their brand new sniper rifle, the Dragunov, okay, sniper rifle on American troops with Russian shooters, okay. A lot of dirty little secrets that even today are not known about that damned war that I was a part of. Okay, so why am I going off on a rant about that? Well, I'll tell you. In 1994, the BMOD, ballistic missile people, sent a probe up to the moon. Actually, it was a twofold thing. They were to go up, they were to explore an asteroid that was in the vicinity, and then go back to the moon and completely re-photograph the lunar surface. What the hell for? Why would you do that? We've already been there. Okay, the moon. We know the moon, right? It's up there. Well, maybe not. Because in Vietnam, okay, my war, and nothing has changed. They're still doing it today, okay, just like they did it then. They'll have reconnaissance craft up there flying around, looking for anything that looks strange. And they may spot something, okay? Oh, gee, what's that? We'll take some pictures of it, go back, have our intel weenies take a look at it, see what it is. And maybe we'll bomb it. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just wait a while to see what those little rascals are up to. Are there more buildings being put in? Are there certain types of vehicles there? Are there facilities to handle troops? Okay. Do they have armor? These are the kind of things the intelligence look for. Well, it's no secret today. There is, in my opinion, because after 20 years of doing some very in-depth and deep machinations on lunar phenomena, I am convinced, and believe me, I'm not the only one, that there is a current presence on the moon, and it's been there for a very long time. Not on the side of the moon that faces us, okay? Because the moon is locked into a geosynchronous orbit. We never see from the planet Earth the far side of the moon. We actually had to go there to see if anything was on the other side that we never see. And there is. I've got photographs that show it. One place, a hot spot, is called King's Crater. Back in February of 2001, I was asked to appear on Art Bell's Coast to Coast show. I'd been on there several times. Actually, Art always regarded me as competition. I was not shy about bringing some problems as I saw them to the public's attention about Art, some of his guests that he refused, to grill when they came out with some crazy stories. And I automatically go to a couple of people when I think about this. Dr. Courtney Brown, Dr. Ed Dames, Major Ed Dames, Dr. Jonathan Reed, all right, and some of the fantastic bullshit stories these guys brought forward. And if it would have been on my show, there would have been an accounting right then and there, especially with somebody like Dames. I'm not here to talk about that now, but this guy, there was a reason he had the nickname Dr. Doom. So anyway, here we are. They're going up. They took approximately 2.5 million photographs of the moon during the Clementine mission. What the hell were they looking for? You only do that if you're looking to see what has changed from your last series of photographs. Are there more facilities there? Are there more apparently interplanetary craft? Have they expanded their base of operations? Well, John Brandenburg doesn't know. The director of that mission doesn't know. You know why? Because all those photographs that were being taken during the Clementine mission, Brandenburg, the director, and others were not permitted to see. They went to a separate department. They were highly and tightly classified. Now, let's jump forward a few decades. Here we are now with the UAP question. And when I was working on my paper, and I strongly encourage you, if you have an interest in this, go up to KGRA-DB, go to their blog spot. You will find my paper there. I would be very interested after you read it, what your thoughts may be. But I came down firmly on the side of no. There will never be permitted to be disclosure. Never. Why? Well, since at least the Roswell incident in 1947, something was discovered, by the powers that be, and they were terrified if it ever became public knowledge. Hey, one day after Colonel Butch Blanchard, the commanding officer of the 509th Bomb Wing at Roswell, that military site at that time was the most secure and secret military installation on the face of the planet. Why? Because they were the only military organization on the globe that had access and the capability of delivering nuclear weapons in the event of war. Blanchard authorized that release of, we got our hands on a flying saucer, that big news report. 1 day later, General, excuse me, my beagle dog is trying to eat my other dog's dog food. Let me pick that up live radio, right? So anyway, Roger Ramey emptied the Roswell saucer story by saying, no, they actually discovered a weather balloon. Now look, all these guys in the 509th, the elite of the elite, okay, the idea that these mostly World War II military veterans would mistake a weather balloon for a flying saucer is preposterous, okay? But the media became very compliant, okay? And they went along with this. It was pure, unadulterated bullshit. And we could do an entire show just on that. But that's not why we're here tonight. Get back to my paper. They discovered something so secret, it freaked them out. Ultimately, this core secret was enveloped by something called a special access program. Now, what this means is, if you don't have a need to know, you won't. And that includes the President of the United States. Okay? We go back to the Bill Clinton years, the Barack Obama years. Both those guys wanted to know what the hell was going on. Clinton had gone to Webster Hubble, a friend of his, a buddy of his, with two requests. Hubble was an assistant attorney general. And he said, Webb, I want to know two things. I want to know who really killed JFK, President Kennedy. And I want to know what the truth is about Roswell and these flying saucers. Well, Clinton came forward and basically admitted he was totally shut out. So even though you may be the commander-in-chief and the president of the United States, that's no guarantee you're going to get the jewels to the kingdom. So I put my thinking hat on and I came up with what I thought it could be. And it's in that document. So I'd be interested in your take on it. And now, with me having said all this, it's time to get on with the show. We're going to bring on our guest, Dr. John Brandenburg. We're going to bring on Mr. Gary Kissel, and we're going to bring on Mr. Mark Center. And gentlemen, let us take it away. Welcome, by the way.
Well, I hate to tell you, you were muted that whole time. What were you talking about?
Yeah, sure. Gary, you never are going to stop being an asshole, are you?
No. Neither is Mark. We're both doomed.
John, how the heck have you been doing? I know that you've vacated the land of Tejas,
Midland, Texas. I got the hell out of Texas. Yes.
You're now
I'm up in
in
Jacksonville, Oregon.
The what the hell was I going to say? The Northwest coastal area or something like that. Well, at least
I grew up here.
At least the weather's getting a little better. Okay, well, you guys all heard what I had to say. Do any of you have anything you want to say? John, I was talking about Clementine. You were in a chunk of that.
I'll give you a little story, Don, that indicates my position on the Clementine. I was out walking with a lovely lady one night, and the moon rose down in Texas. And she said, "Oh, what a beautiful full moon." And I said, "I can't talk about it." I I have been scolded repeatedly that, unbeknownst to me, I actually signed some kind of secrecy oath when I signed on to be part of the Clementine. And all I can say is it reminds me of a science fiction scenario presented in the Mysterians and a sequel called Battle in Outer Space, where they discover there's alien bases on the moon. I recommend the movie highly. It was made in 1957, shows these hot Japanese girls being abducted into flying saucers, hybridization experiment. I know. It's all in there, along with human traders and bases. They're watching dots flying out from the far side of the moon, where apparently the aliens have a base. The aliens are referred to as Mysterians. So I have to, they say, "Well, didn't you work at the little house on the prairie?" And I said, "Yes, but I just played the piano in the lobby. I didn't know what was going on upstairs." Literally.
What'd you think about my intelligence discussion about
I think it's a very I think you have raised very valid points.
Why would you go back?
All I can say is I was part of it. What's that?
Why would you go back and totally rephotograph the moon 2.5 million times and then hide everything?
Well, if I was the Defense Department, I'm just doing my job. You never know when the North Koreans may have built a base on the far side of the moon, something like that.
Yeah.
Or the Mysterians, a bunch of and they're kidnapping hot Japanese women there. Oh no, all I can say, I was part of a Department of Defense mission to rephotograph the moon. 20 years after Apollo had, and they photographed that with the lunar orbiter, and that was spy satellite technology, cutting edge. So I'm afraid I can't help you, Don. What happened? I talked about this.
What happened?
Yes.
That screwed the pooch about photographing and examining that asteroid. What caused that part of the mission to fail?
Well, there were various theories. The theory that was considered most likely was that we had you must remember the background to all this was Mars, a probe called Mars Observer had been sent to Mars. It was supposed to enter Mars orbit only about a month before we were supposed to launch the Clementine. And we were all excited about that. And the chief of JPL photography said, "We're going to take a picture of that face on Mars business and show everybody that it's nothing. And so, we were all taking bets on what the picture would show and how they would release it. And then, strangely enough, the whole spacecraft disappeared near Mars.
Well, there's a hell of a lot more. There's a hell of a lot more to that story.
Oh, I know, and I'm trying to keep this brief. So what happened is Dan Golden called us up at the Clementine mission and said, "Could you send a mission to Mars next year at the next launch window?" And we said, "Let us think about it." And then we came back to him 5 seconds later and said, "Sure." Now this caused a planetary society, and JPL's congressional delegation immediately started fighting with us. It was I call it the first Martian War, and there were people were trading plans in parking lots in the middle of the night in Washington D.C. And turned out Dan Golden did not run Mars exploration like he thought he did. He was overruled essentially by Jet Propulsion Lab. who said that we want to send, we got to want to make a clone of the spacecraft that just failed and send that to Mars instead. And so it was, and I'm sitting there in an office working on a report for a previous satellite mission, which was just low Earth orbit. And this guy is one of these Naval Research Lab scientists comes up to the doorway and says to me, Brandenburg, what the hell are you doing here? And I said, I'm finishing this report, sir, and he says, we need you at the headquarters for the Clementine mission because you're the Mars guy. I had suddenly become the Mars guy. To make a long story short, they did everything they could do to spike that. The Planetary Society even came out in favor of the space station, which they hated, in order to get it funded as the price of keeping Mars in the purview of Jet Propulsion Lab. So it was a very strange couple months. We had two big battles on Capitol Hill, and but anyway, so I will just simply say that was my experience in the Clementine mission. That I was a deputy to the mission manager. I called myself. He was Marshal Dillon and I was Festus, but he did give me a great compliment. He said, John, you were my Tiger team. I knew if nobody else could solve a problem, you could. Now, after we did our stuff at the moon, and by the way, all our commands were relayed through the JPL controlled Goldstone station out in Goldstone, California, the Deep Space Network. Strangely enough, our spacecraft suffered a tremendous malfunction on the way to that asteroid. And the theory was that JPL had, this is, of course, one of these conspiracy theories, that JPL did not want any further competition from us and had, uploaded a virus into the spacecraft so that it would, it spun up like, it's funny, it gave the blue screen of death and spun up like a top. It was finally spinning at 30 revolutions per second. And I figured out how to spin it down, thus saving everyone's job, because they were going to lay off everybody on the mission. But I managed to get the mission continued so that we could.
Do you give any credence to the theory that somebody uploaded a virus?
This was openly discussed in the conferences that I was in with the the mission manager and the other people in charge. But it was a mystery because no one could figure out what had really gone wrong. It was they finally traced it down some bad code. It was just one of these things, and but the emotions and ferocity of the political struggle that occurred on Capitol Hill, when finally you had the Planetary Society, which hated manned spaceflight in general, backing the space station project, you just thought, these people will do anything to prevent us from going to Mars in a spaceship that they don't control. And so that's all I can say. I'm talking here about Mars. I'm talking about a science fiction scenario having to do with the moon from the Masurians. And that's about really all I can say. And so it was to me just another example of how some matters in outer space were deeply secret and people wanted to keep them secret. Especially at Mars.
Recently, as a matter of fact, this very morning,
yes,
I was having a cup of coffee, and when my wife came out, and I had a couple of thoughts, and I bounced off her, and I told her, I said, honey, the other day, I was thinking about my reasoning on why disclosure will never be allowed to happen But then I had a thought that there may have been another reason, along with the core secret.
Yes.
Okay. Along with the core secret, that basically has to do with the very genesis of our species, Homo sapiens sapien. Now,
I will speak to that if you give me a chance when you're done. Finish your thought, and then I will speak to that.
well, I am certainly not the first person to surmise that the human genome very likely was tinkered with by somebody. Okay. As a matter of fact,
Certainly.
back in the 90s, one of the issues that we had out concerned, and the theme of the issue was Darwin's black box. In other words, the human genome, the human animal, if you will, seems to have been laid out with a blueprint. Somebody blueprinted what we are today. Okay. And there's so many things. I mean, for example, this is something that the anthropologists or the science establishment en masse are loath to even take a look at. But apparently, overnight, the human brain, the physical brain, doubled in size.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you think about that. And hey, we're by no means today at the top of the pinnacle. We are no means there. But that was a huge thing. And one of the reasons the establishment gave, one of the reasons for that increase in size was because our ancestors, eating simply plants and vegetables.
Yep. Yeah.
And start eating meat. Okay.
Well, don't forget something else though, Don, is the FOXP2 protein. The inclusion of that was exposed to many animals, but for some reason is in larger amounts in Homo sapiens sapien, which is weird. All hominids, all of us, have FOXP2 protein, but why is it such a large amount in humans?
All right, tell the audience what that is.
Tell us what this is.
It's what
the foxtrot protein.
Yeah, the foxtrot protein allows us to speak. And of course, my favorite science joke in college was that the FOXP2 protein is higher in humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, that allows us to speak. And scientists researched and discovered that it's higher in women, which is why it's harder to get them shut up.
I'm just laughing because I think that's an interesting idea. After being married twice and being very fond of
it's clear we were tinkered with, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is
protein
is found more in humans than in other creatures or mammals like us.
Okay, let me speak to all of this. Okay, we are in a situation where we are likely in a confrontation with several hostile species from outer space. I mean, this is the simplest way I can put it. We are also apparently, and it's both of these types, there's the short little gray guys who, they're gray. They look approximately like, they look approximately like, they're just humanoid though. Then we have reports.
Yeah, that one, Mark.
Repeatedly of people who look just like us. Now, who do you think we're related to?
You're talking about the Viking Norse-looking ones.
No, I'm talking about the Pleiadians, whatever you want to call them. I don't assign any the Pleiadians, so the Pleiades, which are famous throughout history, all the way around the world. It's a tiny little constellation. The Cherokee Indians had blue eyes, many of them, and they said, well, that's because we were the result of shore leave with people from the Pleiades. On and on it goes. So if you have those people show up, and then you have people who don't look very much like us at all, except they have, big heads like we do. Their heads are by the way, their heads are only about the same size as ours. They look like they're really brainy because they're short.
Tiny bodies.
They have tiny bodies, and they're only 4 feet
they
tall.
very well may be biological creations.
Right, and they could be just androids, or they could just, if you adopt the insectoid model of their social hierarchy, they're worker bees. The people we see the most of, and the people who crash the ships, they're not terribly competent apparently. And so anyway, I'm just saying we are in a confrontation, I believe, with people from outer space. They are using every psychological ploy, including, we invented you. You belong to us. This is being told to us by these little short characters. The Pleiadians say, oh yeah, you're related to us. Which one are you going to believe? So we seem to be the beneficiaries of the fact that we are viewed as kindred by a large and powerful group out there in outer space. I'm just telling you the way it looks. And then, of course, you have other people showing up saying, oh, we invented Jesus Christ, Velcro, the automatic transmission, and
wait a minute.
So therefore,
wait a minute. I saw an Enterprise that T'Pol, a Vulcan, basically turned over Velcro.
I'm shocked to hear that.
I remember. Yeah, I remember that.
Science fiction. These science fiction writers, they put such weird stuff. I actually researched where was Velcro invented? It was invented by the Swiss of all people, because somebody got
Scotty invented transparent aluminum.
A transparent aluminum, yes, right, and also known as plexiglass. And so what I'm doing, I'm saying, don't believe anybody from outer space who tells you stuff. They're trying to get a psychological edge on us. They are. I mean, this is a psych war. So perhaps soon to turn into a shooting war, and they're trying. There's two. By the way, okay, I'm going to say one last thing, and then I'm going to shut up. There are two people who wrote on the art of war. One was Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu.
He says the best way he was fighting in medieval China, where psychological ploys were. One of the reasons the Chinese are so big into psychological ploys in war is they're actually very vulnerable to them themselves. So he was fighting in medieval China, and he said the best way to win a war is with no fighting. Pay somebody to open the gates of the city you are besieging in the middle of the night, march in there, fiat accompli. He said, and not only is it the best way to win a war, it's the cheapest way. I mean, now that works on people who have not very strong ideological values or even patriotic values. And you spread the right rumor in the enemy armies, and then the next day the enemy general wakes up and all the tents have been deserted. His army has deserted and decided to go home. That's a Sun Tzu type win. Now, the other guy who wrote about war was von Clausewitz. He's the guy we get the fog of war, the friction of war. His saying was, great outcomes require great battles. He fought Napoleon. He fought him in Russia, and he was chief of staff of one of the armies that was the Prussian armies that was holding up the French so they couldn't come to rescue Napoleon at Waterloo. This guy knew what a real battle looked like. We're talking emptying your muskets and closing with bayonets. There's no way you could fight Napoleon without heavy casualties, mass destruction. And so, okay, if you force people who are trying to win something without a shot to ante up, so they have to fight a shooting war, then you've already made them go off the optimum path for a war. And all the reports I've read, especially little gray guys on the ground, they don't like being shot at. People have shot at them and they run. They don't stand there with a magical force field around them. So I'm just saying, we're in a psychological war as much. We're in a multidimensional war. We don't know how much violence, actual armed violence, has occurred, though I've heard rumors that a lot of it has in secret, but a lot of it is on the psychological plane. So don't believe anything anybody from outer space tells you. No, they didn't invent Velcro. I'm sorry.
Well,
and as far as Jesus Christ is concerned, what?
None of them have contacted me yet. So I can't say they've told me anything, John. Although
so I'm gonna shut up now, Don, and let you and Jerry and it's Mark.
Right.
Kilpatrick.
Well, I have some questions, Don, that I wanted to ask him because of his extensive research into Mars. And if there was life on Mars, did it end with that explosion?
No, not completely.
It moved to Earth, and that's where we came from.
There's still a residue of very tough microbes up there. I wouldn't want to meet any of those microbes in a dark alley, by the way. If they could survive on Mars, they'd look on you as a all-you-can-eat buffet. And Mars is a metaphor as to what is going to happen to this planet if we don't have disclosure. I am convinced that disclosure is essential to human long-term survival.
Well, there's another, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's another train of thought about disclosure. Okay. And this is equally terrifying. There is another train of thought that suggests that, hey, look, if the visitors, whoever they are, wanted to, they could have ended this secrecy cover-up business anytime they wanted to in the last 70 years. Okay.
Isn't that
in the last 70 plus years. So this other train of thought suggests that if disclosure happens, this in fact will create that war you're talking about. Because
that, by the way, that will be their choice if that happens. That's their choice.
Right.
If they want the balloon to go up, you and I both know that the human race is more than capable of taking care of itself. And if it ends up this planet looks like Mars in the end, and that doesn't buy them much of anything, does it? They lose a whole bunch of people. So they don't want that to happen.
It's always been a dirty little secret. It's always been a dirty little secret that if something like that happened, something being an off-world invasion onto the planet, number one, the technology we would be facing would be unimaginable. And
not anymore. But yes, continue.
You know, to the best of my knowledge, we can't get to another star system yet, to the best of my knowledge. But we do have an ace in the hole. And that ace in the hole would be mass planetary-wide suicide
Yes.
with the detonation of the nuclear arsenals around the globe.
Even I can build a nuclear weapon that can be triggered with a Ronson lighter and a fuse. Even I can do that. And I was not
Provided
an
you
expert.
have the nuclear material, of course.
Well, you never know. They
Well,
say
there's medical
Japan
grade
has
that you can
9
easily
tons
get a
of
hold of.
Yeah, Japan has 9 tons of plutonium sitting in Japan. They can become a nuclear power overnight if they want to, but they've decided not to, just to make things.
Well, they've agreed to
but I'm
adhere
just saying,
to the agreements after World War
yeah,
II.
they're
They've
adhering.
adhered
Okay,
to it.
so I wrote in my science fiction novel, Morningstar Pass, the collapse of the UFO cover, which came out in 2003, by the way, that war plan is called War Plan Masada. We just take as many of them with them as we can, and we present the Earth as a frozen radioactive wasteland, and they gain nothing by it. It's a quote from Dune: "He who can destroy a thing can control a thing."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you have to be really tough and brave. And oh, by the way, the 2 heroines in my novel are discussing War Plan Masada when they find these classified leaked documents, and they say, well, even us too, it's an Asian and a blonde newscaster, and they say, even us too, who don't have a lot of military training, know that this sounds like a pretty lousy war plan. We can always improve on this, guys, with some capture technology and some help from like the Pleiadians, etc. And Mark, I sense you have something you need to say. You're looking at me like you're bursting out. Do you want to say something?
I was thinking back to photography of the moon, and we're going to run out of time here, but I'll throw it out there. We can pick it up if you want. We had VHS, then Laserdisc, then Blu-ray, then 4K, right? And we're watching the same. We're watching better qualities of the same movies over and over and over again. So I don't know what the times are between the Apollo when we did that photography and the Clementine, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not making an excuse for them, but I'm also saying that one reason you're going to want to take a lot of new photos of somewhere is because you used a Kodak Instamatic the first time, and now you're going to use an HD camera the second time.
Yeah, and the thing is, the camera that they used was really expensive.
Oh no, I'm just saying that as somebody who doesn't know, my first thought would be, well, yeah, if I went on a vacation and I had some crappy photos and I'm going back, I'm going to bring a better camera and take basically the same pictures again to have better pictures.
Well, in essence, Mark, the cameras, the devices they used came from our spy satellites, okay, like the KH-11. In other words,
I don't know what you're talking about, Don.
Yeah, I know. The KH-11
I just played the piano.
Could photograph a pack of cigarettes on the ground from 2,500 miles up.
Right. So you're kind of making my point. Same with the face on Mars. If we believe what went on there in the 70s, they film it and Hoagland freaks out. Then they film it again and it's either not there and this is a better quality photo, or it got blown up by some kind of a bomb.
Oh no, Mark,
as Hoagland says it did, right?
Au contraire, the pictures we have now of the face on Mars and the pyramid next to it are superb. They show nostrils in the nose on the thing. They show on the pyramid, there's a section of square brickwork that has apparently slid down the side of the mountain. you can look. You can see all of this with frame numbers, so anybody can look them up in my book, Death on Mars. I have all the very best pictures.
I wonder why Hoagland has not resurfaced with these better photos to say, look, it wasn't blown up. I'm telling the truth.
Look,
Dick
guys,
Hoagland and I have had a multi-splendored relationship over the years.
I would love to continue down this thread, but
yeah, absolutely.
We got to go to break.
So read my book, Death on Mars, and then complain to me, okay? Then you can complain to me.
What if we pick this up on the other side?
Okay.
Hey, that's a hell of an idea.
Yeah,
so
excellent idea.
We're going to do. That's what we're going to do, ladies and
gentlemen. Everyone should read Don's disclosure document. It's very good.
Okay, we'll be back after these words with the gang. See you on the other side. And we are back from break. John, did you want to pick up on what you were talking about, or Gary or Mark?
Let's see. Well, Gary, we discussed, whether or not there is evidence for a dead civilization on Mars that apparently dates from a period on Mars that was much more Earth-like than it is now.
Right. And there are theories.
By the way, I am the guy who discovered the Mars ocean, by the way, but they never give me credit because of Cydonia. But you look on Wikipedia, Mars ocean theory, you'll see reference number 1 is me. I gave the paper in 1986. We discovered it in the process. We discovered the Mars ocean in the process of investigating the objects on Mars. We also found a second site on Mars, by the way, with another face that looks very similar to the first face. It's slightly smaller, but it's now called, that place has been renamed, by the way, Galaxis Chaos. Great name. Obviously.
Why is it called that?
Well, Galaxis is just a name, and chaos in geology means cliffs, a lot of cliffs and things like this. But I also realized that what happened was the discovery of this site threw somebody's galaxy into chaos. And that's why they named it this way. So we have Cydonia Mensa on one side of the planet, and then just about the same latitude at the shore of the ancient ocean that wraps around the planet. Look at the pictures from Wikipedia, Mars ocean theory, where I'm referenced, and you'll see that there are 2 faces. Apparently one looks very similar to the one in Cydonia in detail. And we have not just pictures from Viking of it, we now have pictures from more recent probes that confirm details on the face that are obviously artificial. And you can see that in my book, Death on Mars.
Now, some time ago, John, you sent me a photograph from Mars that seemed to show a cliffside that was breaking away, and there appeared to be brickwork under it. Did you ever come to any conclusion with that?
Well, it looks to me as though especially the object, the face on Mars, we're talking about Cydonia Mensa. Within 10 miles of the face of Cydonia, there is a pyramid called the De Pietro and Molinari Pyramid, because they discovered it. It was photographed during Viking. NASA never shows a picture showing the face of Cydonia and the nearby pyramid in the same frame, even though they're part of the same frames in many of the pictures. That's because you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out if you've got what looks like a carved face, and then 10 miles away, a 5-sided pyramid, what that means. It means you're looking at archaeology. And and this apparently dates from the time when Mars had rivers and an ocean. Earth-like, by definition, if you have liquid water flowing around, you have basically Earth-like conditions. The redness of Mars, as I point out in Death on Mars, if you look at pictures of Earth, Mark, you'll see the deserts of Earth are bright red. They're red because of highly oxidized iron. It's called hematite. Same as our blood. It's iron absorbs oxygen well. That's why they use it in our blood. And so if you look at pictures of Earth with that are deserts, like Sahara Desert or this Arabia, places, they're bright red. They're the same color as Mars. That means Mars' atmosphere used to be full of oxygen, is what that means. Where did that oxygen come from? Well, it came from the same place that Earth's oxygen came from plant life, a massive biosphere in the past. So we had Earth-like conditions of pressure and temperature. Obviously, there was a Mars greenhouse driven by CO2, methane and carbon dioxide. And then we had liquid water in large amounts. We had an ocean of water. And then we had an oxygen atmosphere. As it turns out, you can't preserve a greenhouse gas regime on carbon dioxide because it makes carbonic acid, which reacts with lava rock to form carbonate, unless you add oxygen to the atmosphere. You have to, iron carbonate, also known as taconite, is never found exposed on the surface. What you find is hematite, bright red iron ore. And that's because oxygen intercepts the carbon dioxide when it's trying to combine with the rocks. The oxygen is far more reactive than carbon dioxide. And so what you end up with is if everything on Earth was destroyed within about 1,000 years, Earth would be a bright red planet like Mars with no oceans. The oceans would evaporate and be broken up by ultraviolet. The ozone layer would go away, and the sunlight breaks up the water molecules. You'd have a second Mars in this solar system, and I'm trying to avoid that happening there. And that would certainly happen if we had a full-scale nuclear war with an invading army from outer space. That's what's going to happen to the Earth if we have a full-scale invasion from outer space
Star
and don't
Wars,
get help.
right?
But we're gonna if we don't get help from the Pleiadians, which I believe we're already getting help from them, basically very human type aliens that are reported in many encounters. The Greys will try to take this place. In fact, I believe they have been prevented from staging an overall invasion. For one thing, because it's very expensive to do a big multi-scale invasion over many light years. But not only that, they know it'll turn into an interstellar war. As it turns out, Mark, we are in the center of a void in the cosmos. It's called the local bubble. You can look it up on Wikipedia. Local bubble. We are dead center in a region of very sparse stars. We're surrounded by a wall of stars. If you look downward on the Milky Way galaxy, you'll find there's a big circle around the Earth, and we're dead center in it, the solar system. And that means
you're muted, Don.
We're in some sort of neutral zone. That's why many different species are visiting here at once. Nobody controls this area. That means also that if somebody does try to control this area, it'll lead to an interstellar war, not just a war with Earth. So that's my take on this situation. And that's why I want disclosure.
So if we're talking disclosure, panel, we've gone back to a couple of places and took better photos for whatever reasons, and then we have India, and then we have China trying to get out there, and they're taking their own photos and things. James McDonald said an interesting thing that we can talk about in a future episode. And when they asked him about basically disclosure in the 60s and why aren't we hearing about it from other countries, he basically said they're all in it together. He said Australia, China, South America, Europe, Russia, they're all in it together. So if you're looking for, let's say, India landing on or taking better photos of Mars and finding some weird stuff. They're in it with everybody else, and they ain't going to tell you shit. That's what he said, James McDonald.
In what interest does any government, human government, have on telling people, "Oh, we're not the top of the food chain after all"?
So then
we're
what would happen?
Low on the totem pole.
Right.
Where's the plus side to that? Not even the French are willing to talk about that.
So then, are we to assume that there will be a French or a Australian or a Chinese or an Indian Grush?
Yes. I think we're going to see, as this thing starts to unravel, I will make a prediction. This Pentagon paper, they obviously,
the Arrow report that just came out on the 8th.
The Arrow report, they obviously think that the American public, at least the UFO community, is a complete pack of idiots.
Complete idiots. They think we're stupid.
You know, how could they believe we're that stupid?
And, can I read what they said? Can I read what they said real quick?
Yes, please do.
Go ahead.
It's in the private chat too. Arrow has found, this is a quote, Arrow has found no verifiable evidence that a UAP sighting has represented extraterrestrial activity, said Arrow acting director Tim Phillips during a Wednesday briefing at the Pentagon. He continues, Arrow has found no verifiable evidence that the U.S. government or private industry has ever had access to extraterrestrial technology. Arrow has found no indications that any information was illegal or inappropriately withheld
of course not.
From Congress. Now, of course, this is after the congressional hearings, where this leads to a question that I wanted to ask too, and this is because we've had the congressional hearings, we had Grush's testimony, we know that the CIA and Air Force refused to turn over any of their information. What's the impact with this Arrow report on ufology, and will it become more divided?
Oh,
clearly part of the government's plan to continue plausible deniability.
You're using an obsolete term now. They've changed ufology to UApology. I introduced Don to this. It's UAP now. So it actually, if you say it quickly, I said to Don the other day on the phone, I said, You've turned it from a ufologist to a UApologist.
Thank you, Hillary Clinton.
Look,
I'm sorry. I know a lot. I know I'm old enough to know, like everybody else in this room, when a lie bites me in the ass.
We're our own worst enemies. That granted. I read and I sent it to you, Don. I don't have Jerry Gary's email for some reason. I send him most things on Messenger, but
no, you send me stuff through email.
Oh, wait a minute, I do. I forgot all about that. I sent out the PDF, the full thing, the 50-page thing, right? And I was going through it, so I'm reading this, going, "Wow, they really do think we're idiots." But again, who in the 40s? We're going in front of cameras saying, I went to Venus and I met Venusians. So why
that was
Adamski?
Adamski did that. Yeah.
Why wouldn't these guys have no fear in putting stuff out like this, knowing that there's a huge portion of the public who believe the Dr. Jonathan Reed case, the Meyer case, all of this stuff? They believe it anyway. So what are they going to do? Oh, yeah, just throw it out there, because at least half the people out there are going to say, oh, there's nothing to it. Time to move on.
Why would Garash testify? Oh, by the way, I wanted everybody to know the Kilpatrick clan. Look up the Kilpatrick clan emblem. I make sure with the bloody dagger.
Well, Grush is an interesting thing here, that we're coming up on 300 days now that he said we have 30 or 40 people that we're going to bring forward with specific information. That hasn't happened in almost 300 days. Doesn't mean it isn't, but it hasn't happened from his group.
I worked in the defense. I worked in the community. Let's just call it the community. At one point, I had invented a new idea because I wrote a science fiction story, and I realized, oh, I could build this thing. So I built it, and we got government money to develop it. And then one day the Air Force came to me and said, I'm sorry, you can't work on it anymore, and we can't tell you why.
Right.
And,
but again,
and I mean, you know, and look, and I know what it's like to get the tap on the shoulder. In this case, it was a piece of just technology. And so I just left it at that. And I already told you, you know, I got yelled at for even talking about the details of the Clementine mission. So I refer to the Mysterians and
yeah,
which
but
is a
then
great
what?
film. I shared a
like
link
this.
about that, John.
But then what do we make of Grush when he has these interesting claims and stories, but none of his 36 people are coming forward after
Well,
all
that's
these
not
years?
his.
Nothing.
That's not
That's
his
not
fault.
his
It's
fault.
not his fault. I get it, but
They could have all told. They could have all told him, "Sure, I'll come and testify," and then they got a tap on the shoulder.
I get it. But a lot of people are basing their beliefs on what Grush said, and nobody's coming out to say, "Oh yeah,
you have a
this is why
situation,
you should
Mark.
believe it."
You have a situation, Mark, where the Washington press corps would not believe the U.S. government if it told them the sun would rise tomorrow at 7 o'clock. But on this matter, they display childlike credulity.
Sure.
They believe everything the government tells them because it makes them feel safe. I'm sorry.
Sure. I find
Takes
it
courage
interesting that you have Grush with the stories and the evidence from the people, not from him. Now, none of those people can come forward, fine, because of what you went through. I get it. So none of those people can come forward. However, we have this believer set that are still going to say Grush, repeating stories that he was told.
Okay, you remember old Abe Lincoln? Abe Lincoln, you know about him. You know, he said you can fool some of the people all of the time, and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And this group, who's, including you, Mark, because you're willing to countenance the idea that we're not alone in the universe and we're being visited by both good and very bad actors. You're willing to countenance that idea and face up to it. That's just there's always a lot of the population doesn't want to know anything about this because it's too terrifying. It is fundamentally terrifying. I talked to people who said when they did the second picture of the face on Mars, how deeply relieved they were that JPL claimed it was nothing. Actually, it wasn't nothing. They fuzzed up the picture. Yeah, they took the picture at an oblique angle, and they didn't enhance it. And one guy told me how he was a minister. He said, I was so deeply relieved when it turned out to be nothing.
Yeah, of course. So then what do we make of Grush retelling these stories primered by Knapp and those other people for almost 2 years ahead of time before he appeared in the public?
I can tell you, all I can tell you is that I worked in Washington, D.C. for 15 years with the Defense Department on space stuff. I was referred to as Space Cadet, by the way, at my business. And I said, oh, I thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. So then I heard the same stuff that Gorish testified to.
Sure.
When I was working there back in the the 80s and through, I worked there through 85 to 2011. I saw, by the way, I saw 9/11 happen in real time from an office in a classified facility, and we all went upstairs and watched the buildings collapse. And one guy standing next to me burst into tears when the first building collapsed. I knew the guy, and I said, I'll just say his name is Bill. I said, Bill, get a grip. We're at war. You got to chill. we're at war now. And, you know, I had just one moment of unbearable feeling of grief. And then I just thought, no, you got to chill. We're at war. And so I saw a enormous government fuck up, pardon me, a government foul up.
Yeah, you hurt Don every time you cuss, John.
I apologize, Don. I can see your ears turning red. So I'm just saying, and by the way, the story I heard in Washington, D.C. is after 9/11 happened, the furnaces were activated in every building because people had seen signs that it was coming, but they ignored them. We all knew there was we knew there was a big terrorist attack that was going to come. But if this one was so completely unexpected and the modus operandi was so different than we expected, that my understanding was every document that had provided background information before the fact was shredded. All the computer memories were fed into. So you can't figure out what the government knew. In fact, Sandy Berger, who was National Security Advisor under Clinton, he said they were investigating what people knew. What did you know and when did you know it? Right. And he says, I have to go to the National Archives and check my notes. He went there 5 times and smuggled out stuff in his underwear.
Yep.
And destroyed 2/3 of it. And when people I was in Washington, D.C. when this was, I was down in Cape Canaveral by that time at Space Center. And the reaction among my friends that were still back in D.C. was just stunned disbelief. And so they basically slapped him on the wrist and told him to go home. They took away his security clearance and his license to practice law. And that's all that happened to him. And as far as what was in the documents that he destroyed, people speculated that he'd made notes on the margins of all of these reports, you know, and that they'd seen something like 9/11 being planned in their intel networks, but they'd ignored it. Right. They just said, no, it's just like at Pearl Harbor. 2 days before Pearl Harbor happened, Admiral Kimmel and his chief of intelligence, Rochford, they had the attack on Pearl Harbor right on the table in front of them. And they said, nah, the Japanese would never do anything like that. That's why Kimmel got court-martialed.
So should we put as much or more validity into the claims of Grush or the claims of Bob Lazar?
Oh, well, here's the difference between, in my view,
all right,
between Bob Lazar and I'm sorry, what's his name? Bob Grush?
Dave
Grush. Okay, Dave Grush just sounded like one of the guys I worked with, you know, just hardworking, very dedicated professional. I mean, he was a veteran of Afghanistan and, you know, went through some post-traumatic, had to have psychiatric treatment for that. But that a lot of people, almost everybody who came back from Afghanistan needed
good luck finding a veteran from combat that didn't have some sort of therapy.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, in the old days, they would just say, suck it up and go back to work.
And drive on.
Suck it up and drive on. Nowadays, they give you, you know, counseling and stuff like this. I know my uncle was part of 3rd Army from Patton. He was a forward artillery observer. My father would talk about the war because he was in a bomber. He never saw his friends guts gushed all over the inside of his bomber at 30 missions. But my uncle on my mother's side, Uncle Barney, he fought all the way. He fought with Patton's army all the way from Normandy to the River Elbe.
3rd Armored Division. And
he would never talk about the war. Never. You couldn't get him to say anything about it.
I guess the point with Grush and Lazar is, granted, Grush came through the system as a soldier, but Lazar didn't. So of course their views are going to be completely different.
In my view, if you just listen to Bob Lazar's story, He was basically recruited, led on base, shown a bunch of stuff for 2 weeks, and then thrown off base. He was part of some kind of, information leak.
Well, right, but do we hold both of these guys' stories?
No,
or
we don't. We
information?
don't. I don't consider Goresh and Lazar on this. I've complained to Don about this. I've complained to Don. I said, Don, in ufology, I'm a scientist. In ufology, there are no facts. There are only reports. It's like, it's a job for a journalist. You have to weigh which reports are, credible. What degree of credibility can you say?
So
I spent
Rush more credible than Lazar.
Oh, his service. I don't know what Dave. Bob Lazar.
Don would be the first one to say there have been, I forget his name, Don. I'm a little tired today, but we've got that guy who was very good at uncovering the documents back in the day.
Clifford Stone.
Right. He had his service as well, and he turned out to be a bit of a shithead.
Who's that?
It's
Stone or Garash?
Clifford Stone. Clifford Stone. There is a point in this field of ufology, if you allow it to happen. Clifford became convinced he was a star.
Yes.
And in order to maintain that position, you got to keep feeding the beast.
Absolutely.
It's like being in television. Okay.
Yeah.
You gotta keep bringing more and more and more out. And Cliff became a fantasist.
Well, no, that's true, but he still had the background, right? He still had the background, and
I've got freaking military files right here.
Okay.
I got them right here.
And regardless of that background and his early research, he turned into something else that was counter to maybe what he learned in the service and things. Okay. So I'm not discounting Grush's what he did in the service. I am not. I couldn't. I was never in the service or any of this. So I applaud that. But does that mean on its surface that he can't end up manipulated into by these guys the same thing as Stone? Of course it does. So how does one hold his stories? And let's be clear about that.
I don't even know this guy, so I don't give him how can I give credence to somebody I've never even I've never even heard of it.
He's telling stories that are interesting, and so did Lazar. Now, they come from two different areas and two different backgrounds, but they're still telling highly detailed stories.
Well, some of the stuff that Bob Lazar reported, Element 105, they've made Element 105. It lasts 1 nanosecond.
115.
Yeah.
Yeah, 150. It lasts a nanosecond.
Oh, no, I get it.
It's not some philosopher's stone, they've invented it. They've already made it. And the most stable isotope lasts like a nanosecond. It's it's so, that part of the story.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry.
I understand.
Well, he sounds like somebody who didn't have a very deep technical education, especially knowledge of plasma of nuclear physics, who was told a story, and these people sit up all night trying to think of they put out just enough information, and then they always put a destruct package in it. They put in some completely spurious, so they can always call it back. Oh, well, Bob Lazar saw these captured saucers. Yeah, well, they ran on Element 115, which everybody knows now is that can't be right.
Right.
And I'm as a scientist, I looked at I'm a scientist, so I looked at Element 115. And I looked it up. 1 nanosecond or something. It's just
right.
You can't fly a spaceship based on that. And so I get, the story I understand from the whole ufology thing in the government is that it's like Wall Street. Those who say don't know. And those who know don't say. They're under secrecy oaths. I was never given a secrecy oath. When I told them I wanted to write a science fiction novel about this, Morningstar Pass, the collapse of the UFO cover-up, based on stuff I'd heard around the coffee machine and the water cooler, the place I worked, to my great surprise, they said, "Yeah, John, we always liked your reports. Why don't you write that? But make sure it's labeled science fiction." And they said,
Right.
"We'll read your novel." And several of them did. And they told me they said, "How did you get so much stuff right?" And I said, "Well, I just connected the dots. I'm just, but
It
I'm
means
just
a little
say,
more, though, John, when a scientist connects the dot, not just your average guy.
Well, I'm also thanks to my father, I'm very knowledgeable about military history. And I've seen, like most people don't realize that the conquistadors, after conquering Mexico and then the Philippines, heard about this very rich country with beautiful women and all this silk and gold, streets paved with gold, called Japan. So they loaded up their boats with the conquistadors and sailed up to Japan. And guess who met them on the beach? The samurai, who were willing to just gladly fight to the death. And not only did the samurai have good steel, they had horses. They had good archers with steel-tipped bows.
Probably the single most accurate archers.
They had muskets because the damned the Portuguese and the Spanish were actually rivals, had arrived at Japan 5 years earlier and sold the Japanese the secret for making gunpowder and sold them muskets. And soon every samurai warlord had his own musketeers. When the Spanish saw that, they're loading their conquistadors into the boats to go make the landing and plant the flag, saying we claim this place for the Pope and the King of Spain. And Captain Pedro looks through his binoculars from his galleon with cannons. The Japanese didn't have any cannons. In fact, the Japanese at that time didn't sail any further from the coast than they could see. They were just a very basic close to shore fishing society. They didn't have compasses. They didn't know the world was round. They didn't know any of that stuff. But they knew how to fight. And they had muskets. And the Spanish just said, "Okay, this ain't the Philippines and this ain't Mexico. Get the boys out of the boats. We're headed home." And that's why they didn't, they had 1 or 2 clashes with the samurai. And the Spanish said, "Oh my God, we can't." The Spanish basically concluded Japan was too far away, too advanced, and too damn warlike to take. There's this one letter from the governor of the Philippines back to the King of Spain, and he says, "The most badass people in this area are the Japanese." He says they fight like, and they have muskets. And they have steel, and they know how to use them.
And they're not afraid to die.
They're not afraid to die. No, they're not afraid to die.
In fact, they embrace it. Well, as they would say in Japan, "Hey, wakarimasu, Brandenburg-san."
Hi.
So regarding Grush and what
Thank you, Jerry-san.
Regarding Grush and what he released and the secrecy oath, what view do you have on? Did they just say to him, in your view, did they just say to him, "Go say whatever you want," or "You can't say this," or "You can't say that"?
Well, the conditions he was testifying because Congress had passed a law saying that he was a whistleblower. So he blew the whistle. And he reported everything that he reported I had heard working in Washington, D.C. But did I go on shows talking about it? No, because I I instead wrote a science fiction novel about it. There. That's what I did.
So if I'm to understand this correctly, evidently when he spent that year or two with Knapp and Corbell and those guys before he turned into a whistleblower, and that's been confirmed now that he went to conventions and all that stuff. What exactly did he blow the whistle on that wasn't already really known? If you get my drift.
Well, Mark, define known. I mean, we know we have reports of crash retrievals.
Sure.
We have reports of actual armed clashes between special forces and aliens in underground bases.
Right.
Remember Leonard Springfield?
Yeah.
I talked to him before he died, and I asked him about this supposed clash at Dulce, and he said, well, I've heard 3 different versions of what happened, and the only difference really between the accounts is the body count. How many humans and how many aliens got killed in this firefight?
What do you think of his testimony, though, that there was Secret Service involved? Because he said that exactly those words.
Whose testimony was that? Gorish?
No, the gentleman that was involved. He died later. Don, you remember who I'm talking about?
I know. It's a sad thing. He committed suicide after telling him the government.
James McDonald.
Yeah, James McDonald. That he said that these were special forces and Secret Service that were in combat with these creatures.
Yes.
They
were the only authorized military forces allowed at such a secret facility.
And I just was surprised hearing Secret Service.
Secret Service?
Yeah, he said Secret Service.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. I just heard it was special forces. But that's, Mark, that's a report from a source that I regarded pretty highly, Leonard Stringfield. I talked to him on the phone several times about this. And
his background, Leonard's background was astounding. He was in the Army Air Corps during the Second World War. He was one of the first 100 Americans to land in Japan immediately following their surrender. And they had no idea what they may be walking into. And as an aside, Leonard Stringfield's flight was buzzed by a UFO as they went in there to Japan. Now think about that. That's a little known.
I have thought about it. What does that mean? What does it mean when you have a stockpile of 5 nuclear weapons representing all the nuclear weapons on Earth? Because people from the Roswell veterans told me this at a meeting called Recollections of Roswell, and I checked, and it's, as far as I'm concerned, that is an absolute fact. All 5 Batman type Nagasaki atomic bombs that we had in 1947 were stored at Roswell. And you'd think, okay, these aliens are buzzing this place. They apparently lose 2 ships in one night, interestingly enough. And one crashes near Roswell and another crashes near Socorro, about 100 miles away. These people now claim that all human weapons are useless, and we don't even care about the human technology or the the Space Brothers crowd says, oh, the aliens could take over anytime they wanted because our weapons are useless against them. And yes, that's what they want you to believe. Why would anybody be interested in our nuclear weapons if they were useless? Why? Mark, let's just say these reports are true, that people have reported a lot of UFO activity over our nuclear weapon sites. Why would they be interested in them?
Well,
If
there's
they're
two sides of that. If you're Greer, you'll say because they love us and they don't want us to kill us. If you're the other side, you say because they want those things or they want to know about those things.
I actually had the displeasure of having lunch with Jim Greer. It was along with DePietro.
Stephen.
Vince DePietro.
Stephen Greer.
I'm sorry, Stephen Greer. We were all having lunch together. What?
He's a cult leader.
He's a cult leader, and we're sitting there, and I grew up in a tough town. I got in 2 brawls in high school. I'm proud to say I'm half Viking, so I brag about stuff like that. And my middle name is Einar, which means warlord in Norse. And then DePietro grew up in a tough neighborhood, Italian neighborhood in Baltimore. So we've both been around the block and know what happens sometimes that things get out of hand. So we're listening to Greer. And I asked him, I said, well, what about all the animal and reported human mutilations and the abductions? You say these people are space brothers and they want to just do us. Why are they doing that if that's going on? And he says, oh, that's government disinformation. And
both
DePietro and I looked at each other like, oh my God, this guy's delusional. The luncheon went downhill very quickly after that. We just said, I'm sorry. We found evidence for a nuclear holocaust on Mars caused by somebody who wasn't from Mars, probably bombarding Mars from space. And Mars, in the words of my good buddy David Paff, who's negotiating Hollywood for me, Mars is a metaphor for what's going to happen to this planet if we don't have discovery.
The dirty little secret.
The dirty little secret. Yes.
Earth has been hit with nuclear weapons in the distant past.
Oh, and Oppenheimer knew it.
The sites are known. There's still radioactivity there. One was in India.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Still highly radioactive. Zechariah Sitchin, pointed out another area in the Middle East. He details it in his book, The Wars of Gods and Men. Okay.
Yes.
The Anunnaki were fractious beings. Okay. They had a lot of conflict among the various cult status Anunnaki, like Enlil, Enki, and others, Marduk.
Sure.
So, yeah. The dirty little fact is Earth has its own nuclear story to tell. But
and they say that Oppenheimer knew this from studying the Sanskrit, and that's why he knew the atomic bomb could be built and deployed.
Right.
Because it's recorded at the thing brighter than 1,000 suns going off, destroying an entire Bronze Age army. We're talking elephants with their skin burned off, rampaging through the troops, people getting sick, all their fingernails and hair falling out afterwards, people throwing themselves in the river to wash the radioactive dust off themselves. That's all in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And so all is not right in the heavens. I tell people, I said, humanity and the earth are not an aberration on the cosmos. We are a reflection of its nature. We're part of its fabric.
So regarding Grush and the whistleblower access,
yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I haven't heard a lot of personal issues that have been slapped back on him. Right. It's been close to 300 days, but I haven't heard a lot. Doesn't mean it hasn't.
I'm surprised
happened.
They haven't dug up something else on him.
Right. I just haven't heard anything other than, he had to go see a psychiatrist, blah, blah, blah. So because of that lack of slapback against him, evidently there hasn't been a whole lot. Does that give us pause to think that, yes, we are going to have more?
That's not true, Mark. He was targeted.
Well, he was.
assassination.
Yes, he was targeted.
He was targeted. They brought up his psychological profile.
I just mentioned that.
They brought up the fact that he may be on the autism scale.
Right at the same time.
Yeah, Mark was. I understood what you were saying, Mark. That you were just bringing up.
No,
the
Mark.
same thing.
But also, Goresh reported that his wife was threatened. His wife,
sure,
with a
of
W.
course, but again, you're going to get this if you're on Facebook and you say I like Trump. Okay,
right?
You're just going to get canceled saying something like that. So I would say that in the big scheme of things, he's a whistleblower for the most important.
Who's going to threaten somebody over their testimony in front of Congress about UFOs? With we can reach out and touch you anytime we want, and your wife, your family too. Who's going to be in the UFO community? Greer's people? Are they going to go threaten him? Who's going to go threaten him?
Right. I'm just saying that because
what will be their possible motivation for telling him to shut up?
Right. But because he didn't get it, I don't know if you guys will agree with me, but he didn't get canceled any worse than a lot of people who are nobodies who said the wrong thing on social media.
If I was still married and somebody called me up after the show and said, you got a real nice wife, be ashamed if she got in a disfiguring car accident, that would give me pause. All I know is
he's being targeted by people within the government is the problem.
He's being targeted by people in the government.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, you can't have a secret government without a secret police.
No, that's fine.
I sat there and listened to Bill Moore, and Don was there with me at the MUFON meeting in Las Vegas, where he testified after being a hero in the UFO community for releasing the MJ-12 documents, which were verified by, Stan Friedman, to my satisfaction. And so he gets up in front of us and says, "Oh, I work for the government, and Paul Benowitz, we fed him as much information as possible because the government was trying to drive him to a nervous breakdown, and they succeeded."
Right.
And I'm there reporting on their progress.
Right.
I used to drive by Benowitz's office every morning to get into work at Sandy. He reported that he was seeing stuff over Monsanto Mountain, which was a big nuclear laboratory for nuclear weapons. And I even saw nuclear weapons being taken in there one day. And so he was told, he starts watching UFOs activity over that. And he started talking about it, and the government told him to shut the hell up. And he kept talking. So they sent in a special team, apparently. They put LSD in his toothpaste or something. So suddenly he went off the deep end. And Bill Moore was there to report on their progress. And they finally put old Paul Benowitz, formerly a respected scientist, in a mental institution where he died. Was never released.
Right. So with Grush, he's still going on to shows. The Rogan show and things of that sort. So he's
well,
not
if he gets
out.
If something happens to him, then guess who will be the chief suspects?
Right. I'm just saying as it sits now. So he comes out, he does the Congress thing, he goes on to a number of podcasts, let's call them. He's had some pushback. I'm not going to say he hasn't.
Sure.
The amount of pushback that he had, will that have a deleterious effect to whistleblowers in the future to help back up his
beloved wife was threatened? Yes, that'll make a lot of people think. Well, I'm sure a lot of those 30 people said were going to come forward, when they heard about that, they thought maybe this isn't a good idea.
Right. However, after that happened to him, he kept going on podcasts. At least he did.
Well, he can't retract what he said. All he can do is keep talking to keep the searchlight.
Well, he could go
silent. It's difficult to kill somebody in the limelight.
But he could go silent and just say, I guess I'm not going to be going on to Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Mark, if I talk to him, I will give him that advice.
Well, no, I'm just saying. So why would you? Again, I'm not a basher of him. I'm trying to understand it. So if my wife gets this issue and some other stuff happens, am I going to then go on to a very popular show? After that happens, I'm not. I'm just going to, I think I'm done here because they're threatening my loved ones. But that's not what he did.
Well, it's a calculation on his part. I don't know him. I've never met him. All I know is I heard the same stuff he reported on.
Yeah. I mean, is there anybody on this panel? Is there anybody on this panel, if they had a very interesting story to tell and the feathers went up and all this horse shit comes down on you and your loved ones, would you then respond by going on a very popular show and telling the same story?
You're talking
guys,
to somebody who did.
Guys,
on the
look.
mission, I was warned not to talk about it. I can't talk about the moon. One guy told me, you can talk about Mars all you like, Dr. Brandenburg.
That was because of me. That was because of me. John. I brought John on a TV program.
Yes, you did, you disturber.
But anyway, I wanted to say,
I got a royal ass chewing by two people, including the mission director that I worked for, called me up right after that thing. And it had been 20 years since I'd been on it. And then another guy from Naval Research Lab called me up, and they just gave me a royal ass chewing over the phone.
Don Ecker.
And I thought the Navy guy told me, he says, Brandenburg, you can talk about Mars all you like, just don't talk about the moon. So when I talk about
during that period of time back in the 90s, we were after I broke 2 stories.
Yes.
On television, on NBC and on CNN. I broke one on the Martian Phobos 2 probe.
Yes.
On Larry King Live in November of 91. And then in May and June, I broke the STS-48. Suddenly, we had mysterious vans and cars all over us.
Yep.
One night down, I had Rich Saraday and Michael Younger, who was a rather infamous character that came out during that period of time. The guy had connections.
You mean aside from me, you're an infamous character?
Oh, yeah. The guy had connections. And make a long story short, we were having a very special broadcast on my radio show then. And as I'm going into the studios, there were a whole bunch of people there. And somebody grabbed Michael Younger and said, look at that car over there. And over there was like a Ford Pinto car. It looked like an NSA facility. It had about 5 antennas on it.
I know.
No, I shit you not.
And I know you don't. I've seen him.
He went behind this car, got the license plate, and called a contact of his and said, who is this guy? It turned out to be a private investigator, was sitting there with a big 35 millimeter camera, had a notebook with all kinds of notes and stuff on it, sitting in his car, watching us go into the studio. And it turned out whoever he talked to did further checking, and this guy had been a licensed PI. Now he no longer had his license, but guess who he was working for? They tracked down his employer, Lockheed.
Who is that? What?
Lockheed.
Who? Lockheed, a contractor. Oh, they farmed it out to a contractor. What are you doing? Trying to make our stock price go low? What the hell's wrong with you?
So yeah,
And
I mean, but I had never had anybody approach me personally to warn me off anything. Now I don't know why, because we were making a hell of a lot of noise then.
Yes,
but nobody ever approached Vicky or I. Okay. That we know of. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Always editing you, Don. She's always editing you.
Yes. Yes.
I will mention, by the way, that after meeting with John Lear and his discussions of the secret treaty and also the battle at Dulce in, it was the late 80s and 90s, I was followed and photographed. They wanted me to know I was being followed and photographed. You asked me to describe the car. It was a brown car. And the guys were wearing brown windbreakers, and they had this enormous camera with this enormous lens on it, and they were followed me out of my parking lot of my apartment as I was going to work, taking my picture. And I did the best I could. I went to work because I had a security clearance and reported to the security meister. And she said, "Well, what color was the car? Can you describe the car?" And I said, "No. Well, it was a brown car."
Well, guys, as much as I'd love to go more, we're out of time. I just
out
looked
of
at my
time.
clock. That's it for tonight. We'll be back again next Monday. Hey, UAP Crossfire on Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Guys, it's been a great show. Thank you so much.
It's been a wonderful show. Thank you,
I'm going to
Mark,
go before Chanel cuts me off. Good night, all.